Okay, hello everybody and welcome to the debate number 4 of this Ecom Online 2020. And today we will talk about how to nudge people into new mobility thinking and behavior. And I hope you are ready, all of you viewers, with questions, so we can have a really good debate later. And I also hope that you have better weather than I have up here in Sweden, because here it's been raining all day. So welcome once again, and be sure to ask questions when you're looking at YouTube in the comments, and we will get them to us so we can answer them. So I will give the floor to Tytti Viinikainen from the EPOM board to start. Welcome, Tytti.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us here. My name is Tytti Viinikainen from the Finnish Transport and Communications Agency from Finland. I represent the EPOM board here and just want to share a few words to welcome you. So EPOM is the European platform on mobility management. So perhaps you might already know that now in June, we were supposed to have the 23rd conference, European Conference on Mobility Management in Cascais, Portugal, and it was obviously cancelled or actually postponed to next June. So we will have the Ecom conference in a year in Cascais. But in the meantime, all the abstracts that were submitted, they can be found on the website. They will be there. And then in addition, we are having this series of online debates. And actually the moderators, as Jesper, and all the speakers, they have been chosen among the authors that submitted their abstracts. But actually they will not go through all the papers now, but they will discuss the themes of the session, and then also they will discuss new challenges that COVID-19 might have or probably has caused to transportation and mobility. Today our theme is about how to lead people to adopt sustainable behavior, how to get deeper knowledge about people's behavior in order to influence their decision making. And of course, these questions, they are in the heart of all mobility management. So what is actually the secret of successful behavior change measures? I hope we will find the secret today. And then it's very interesting to discuss if COVID-19 has changed these issues. So are people more willing or less willing to change into sustainable modes after the pandemic? Have the attitudes changed somehow, and how? Perhaps do we need new methods and tools now for influencing people's behavior? Do we need new kind of understanding and research on our target groups? So, for example, these are the questions and issues we have to think about now after the pandemic. But once again, welcome to this online debate. And then I give the speech to our brilliant moderator, Jesper.
Thank you, Tytti. And welcome to Florence also. Welcome. So I'll give a short introduction to the theme, and I need to show you some pictures because there are some interesting pictures here on. Let me just get this up and running the right way. On the effects of COVID-19 that we really need to look at before this. And I'm sure you have heard a lot before. Let's see, take away this one. About COVID-19, of course. Sorry, but see this one was too bad. But we have this. This is some figures from Sweden during the COVID-19 pandemic period, showing some interesting figures. If we have this one on the left top corner, that shows car traffic, car trips in Stockholm, Sweden. And it's in downtown, the blue one, and on the big motorway around Stockholm on the red one, showing that here we started the pandemic here in Sweden. So it went down, but it's been working its way up. And so on the bypass, on the motorway, we're almost up to the same figures in car traffic as we had before the pandemic. And also the figures within the city are getting higher. And we can see the down bottom here is also car traffic, showing the congestion levels during days. The last 7 days, this was 2 weeks ago, showing the average congestion in 2019 is the gray dotted curve. So you can see that it's much lower in the mornings, but the congestion in car trips on the roads are up at the same as in 2019 already. And especially during weekends, even more than it was before. So car traffic is going up steadily. And if that's good, I'm not sure. And if we look at the right side, we can see bike trips in Stockholm city. We have the pandemic over here. So it went down first, but then it went up. So the bike trips has really gone up, and it's really high now. You can see the red one is the normal one before the pandemic situation. So a big increase in biking that we have seen in many cities. And these are trips, walking trips, the bottom right corner. And they went down when COVID started, and it's been down. It's been coming up a little, but not much. And the next picture you can see here is about public transport in Stockholm. It went down when it started, and it's been down since. It's picked up a little, but not much. So it's very clear that public transport is not the thing during this crisis. And this is also some comparison made by Stockholm and Lisbon, where we almost should have been now, outside Lisbon and Cascades. You can see that this is from Citymapper Mobility Index, and that is only public transport, not car traffic. So the public transport really went down, and it stayed down and it's going up. It's been pretty high in Sweden because we had some looser roads, and the roads and legislations have been not so hard as in other countries. And on the left side, compared Stockholm to Paris, and you can see Paris was really closed down and then opened up, and actually it's getting the movement with public transport are really picking up in Paris. So it looks interesting. And this is just a picture showing, we don't have to go into it, but the air quality in Stockholm has gone much better during this time also, of course, as in many cities. And this is interesting. This is the left figure shows the municipality of Örebro in Sweden, and how the employees have started to work with Teams, Microsoft Teams. So it's gone up. This is percentages. So it's gone up 3,200% during this time in calls and meetings, 705%. And on the right-hand side, it's for the University of Örebro, and it's minutes in meetings in Zoom. And you can see by yourself, it's down here, and then everything started, and it's gone up. Now it's from 56,000 minutes in Zoom to 6.1 million minutes in Zoom. So it's really gone up. So just to start the discussion later on, it's like we're at ground zero now with mobility, definitely. It's very clear when you look at the figures and how we have tackled the way we have to travel, that we have built our cities and beyond for cars, as we know, because we can see that the car traffic has really gone up to the same levels as before, because you're on yourself in the car, and we have several measures in Sweden, for example, that makes it easier to use the car during the pandemic period. But still also bikes has really gone up in many cities, and many cities are planning for and doing new bike lanes, both permanent and just for these times. So it's really good, and hopefully that could sustain. But it's also very clear that the mobility system isn't seamless or combined yet. Very clear that you can see that public transport has gone down. And it has not been connected with other mobility services that could have been used, like bikes or like kick scooters or e-scooters and so on. So we really need to upgrade the system we have now, and we have, as I call it, the ground zero, because we have done this stress test on the whole mobility system in the whole world, in every city. Now, it can't really get worse than it has been these times. So now we have to build a system that could cope with these worst case scenarios. Thank you. Just some information when we go into the discussion and the debates. So we have 3 speakers that should have been speakers on the conference. So we will hear a little bit from them. That's Florence Labarre from France, and Radomira Jordova from the Czech Republic, and Rui Velasco from Portugal. We'll hear their thoughts about both the theme, how to nudge people into new mobility thinking and behavior, but also their thoughts about the effects and how COVID-19 would affect the mobility in the future. So, Florence, would you start?
Okay, yes. I'm gonna talk about how to about incentive messages to make people move from the car to public transit. And in order to encourage modal shift, we think that we need first to bring car driver to think about their habits and question their travel habits. And to do so, we created an we created a system to broadcast incentive messages that we integrated in a travel planner app. And these messages promote public transport and cycling when a car driver search for a route with car. The objective of these messages is to let the car drivers to perceive sustainable transport more, to perceive that sustainable transport are positive, to get them to have a more positive perception. Because awareness of benefits of sustainable transport is the first step for a travel behavior change. And to test the impact of this broadcasting system on travel behavior change, we designed a range of messages. And those messages were built on different hypotheses, but those hypotheses are not neutral on the perception of the messages. And the design choices determine the perception that one individual will have on the argument presented in the messages. And consequently, the design choices will determine the impact on travel behavior. So that's why in our study, we investigated how the message we created are perceived and what are the reasons of this perception. And to do so, we used the focus group method. And the result of this study will give information to improve incentive communication in travel planner apps. So like I said, we use different hypotheses to design our messages. We use 3 hypotheses actually. The first one is contextualized messages help users to protect themselves in the use of the promoted transport, like public transport or cycling. The second one is positive communication increases message acceptance. And the third one is a picture make the message attractive. Based on those hypotheses, we created our message composed of 3 elements, and I will show you the messages I am talking about. So the 3 elements of the messages we created is the first, the text. You can see in the green square. It presents the advantages of the sustainable transport promoted. And then we have a picture to present, to illustrate the benefits we want to promote. And it takes all the width of the smartphone screen because we want to get the attention to the user. And then the third element is the detail for the sustainable transport route. And we give this information to prove the car drivers that we have at least one solution, one alternative solution to the car trip. So on this slide, you can see 4 different messages. And for the first message, for example, we conceived this message to raise the awareness that trips in public transport are not a waste of time because we can do different activities during this trip, unlike when you drive a car. In the second message, we wanted to show how inexpensive public transport are. So with the various discounts that an employee can get, for example, in Bordeaux, in France, a monthly pass is 35 €, but with the discounts that an employee gets, the monthly pass is not only 16 € or even less sometimes. In the third message, we wanted to point out a well-known problem by the car driver, which is finding a parking place. And so in the picture, we show the problem. In the text, we say that we have a solution. And in the car route route details information below the picture, we give the solution, which is taking 2 buses. And in the last message, which is yes.
Sorry, but do you know if you can enable your microphone, or is it the microphone from the computer, because it's sounding a little bit strange?
Okay.
Is it better? Right? Okay.
Wait.
Yeah, because it was my microphone from the laptop. I don't know why. Thank you. So in the last message, we wanted to advertise that using public transport is easy because many times you can find direct trips, like the one you have. It's only you take only one line, which is the tramway. Yeah. So what are the effects of these design choices on the perception on the messages? The positive communication got the adherence of people on messages. I don't think we need the messages anymore. And the picture caught the respondents' attention, especially when it was a pretty picture in the message. However, people who are not in favor of using sustainable transport prefer to focus on route comparison, so the car with the sustainable transport routes, rather than focus on the benefits indicated in the text and the picture. Because these kind of people they are looking for factual information. In the opposite, people in favor of using sustainable transport are more sensitive with subjective messages like experience. However, they perceive these messages differently when the message is in the travel app and when it's out. When it's out, they agree with the message, but when it's in the travel app, they are kind of more critical because they project themselves and they are thinking, will I benefit of this advantage in my situation? Or is this benefit is true for my trip? So this shows that a contextualized message help people to project themselves and imagine whether the solution might suit them. We also observed that the element that the people read is different according to how they want to use sustainable transport. If they are not in favor of using sustainable transport, they prefer to use the route detail information. And when they are in favor of using sustainable transport, they prefer to focus on the text and the picture. And now to respond to the few questions we were asked for this presentation, like who are the main target group for the solution we've developed. So the car drivers are the main target group because incentive messages are made to get them to think about their mobility habits and perhaps change their perception of sustainable transport. But the system to broadcast incentive messages is made for transport authorities and transport operators who want to nudge people into mobility thinking. And what is new from this system is that that we created incentive messages that we put into a travel app, and also the finding that the perception of messages change when it is integrated in a travel app. And I think this is an interesting result because MaaS, Mobility as a Service, will widen the scope of possibilities to create modal shift incentives in a travel app. And mastering contextualized communication will be a real asset for that. And what is transferable to the other cities and region? The technology. The system to broadcast incentive messages can be integrated to any MaaS or travel planner apps, and also the result on message designing. However, these are preliminary results and they need to be further investigated. And finally, what is the relevance of this study for the future? So the coronavirus has caused a sharp drop in public transportation ridership, like you Jesper shown earlier, and it will take time to return to a normal level. So for example, in the transport operator in Lyon, in France, estimates that it will take 2 years to come back to normal. So this shows the importance of using multiple tools to encourage travel behavior change, including communication in a travel app. But for sure, getting back people in public transport will be a challenge that we need to make to respond to global warming and pollution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next one. 2 years, it's horrible to hear, but it's understandable. Should really be connected with other services, so it could be bigger and broader. Okay, so the next speaker, Radomira Jordova from the Czech Republic.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Jesper, for the floor. We have the theme, how to nudge people to new mobility thinking and behavior. And I would add also to new mobility planning. So in the first part, I will reflect on nudging and breaking habits a little bit. And in the second part, I will say a few words about our research we have done recently. So nudging itself, it's a broad term from behavioral science. It's encouraging, naturally leading, positively influencing behavior of people. And it can touch any area of lifestyle, actually. You can have it in a healthy food or choice of housing or mobility needs as well. And nudging to sustainable mobility should give messages in a natural way, sending visual, audible, emotional messages to mobility users. And to be able to nudge, it's important to understand how people make decisions. What are the factors upon which they decide to take the trip? So people have their opinions, their stereotypes and values like freedom of movement. We have a recent experience right now from the coronavirus crisis when even the whole areas or villages, cities were closed. So this value was kind of limited. So people had to adapt to that situation. And the natural way of decision making is to have freedom of choice of a trip. So how the trip will look like, what means of transport I will choose, what itinerary I will choose, what services will be included in my trip. So this is the natural way of decision making. We have also values like health. We decide upon the health value. I cycle because I want to be healthy. We are influenced by other people, their opinions like family or closest friends. What are their habits or status in mobility? We also decide by our experiences in the transport system, if the trip was good, smooth, or if we have bad emotions in the trip. And we also decide upon objective factors like weather, the time of the day, if I have luggage or not, or if the frequency of public transport is sufficient. So the question is, why should we nudge and what is its relevance? So as I said, nudging is voluntary. It makes voluntary choices and it doesn't break the freedom of movement itself. So it's relevant, especially in the cases when the people decide against their own good. Like we have a city with a good public transport system, which is comfortable, low cost, or even free of charge and smooth. And the person still chooses a car for its movement, going to the city center, and then pays congestion charge, for example, parking fee. So it's not wise in that situation. So nudging is relevant to change the people's behavior. And who plays the primary role in nudging beside users? Definitely planning authorities and mobility providers. So through a good planning, the city can change a lot, like its picture. It can give a positive message to people. Like in my city, in Olomouc, it's the closest city, about 100 inhabitants. And it sends the message to people showing that they want to have the happy and content city with a smart plan for transport. So this is a typical way how the city plans, for example, when they prepare the sustainable urban mobility plan. And they always can change their living space. So they decide how they organize the street, how the city looks like, what is the offer of mobility, etc. And the authorities should also understand people's needs, wishes, and willingness to change habits. So they should meet users, invite them to participate and plan together, like at round tables or city festivals, workshops, etc. So these are meeting users, and it also can prevent misunderstandings and mobility problems in the future. So city authorities, together with the users and mobility providers, they change public space, infrastructure, and services. It's very much important where to place the measures because they draw attention and they trigger some decisions. Like, for example, in my nearby city in Přerov, there is a bike tower right next to the railway station. It's visible from a distance. So people can choose if they still take a car, come into the railway station, or if they use the bike, if the facility exists and the service is there. And it must be a clear and positive message. And people can be also helped in their decision by giving them information, which they can translate into direct benefits on costs. Like if we communicate fuel prices or a total cost of car ownership or emission levels. So people should know what are the consequences of their transport behavior. And on the other hand, the authorities should have information on the impact of their planning. So at the start, for example, when preparing the sustainable urban mobility plan, cities make analysis. They discover the strongest and weakest points of the transport system and how it is used, what's the model split, what are the effects of transport behavior, and they survey the users under which conditions they would be willing to change their transport habits. So in Czechia, we have the first generation of sustainable urban mobility plans. They are obligatory for the cities above 50,000 of inhabitants. And a year ago, we made a research in 50 Czech cities, in largest and middle-sized cities, and we got replies from 45 key stakeholders and 67 representatives from 53 cities. And we asked them about transport problems they face, what messages they want to give to people, and what measures they mostly take, how they plan their transport policy, and how they monitor it and evaluate it. So we could see the major transport problems were linked to car traffic, the intensity of car traffic, like parking or intensity of car traffic in the city centers, freight transport, etc. And we also asked about solutions. The most solutions which they mentioned were the walking and cycling infrastructure improvements, and also the regulation of car traffic in cities. And these make good conditions for mobility management and nudging people to new mobility thinking and behavior. And during this research, cities mostly asked for advice in selection of measures. So when they prepare the action plans for SUMPs, they want to know what are the relevant measures and what is their impact. So in our project, which is financed by the Technological Agency of Czech Republic, we, together with the mobility team of the university in Ústí nad Labem, developed a tool called PLAM. It stands for Planner of Urban Mobility. The abbreviation is PLAMM. And we want to help cities and SUMP planners with selection of transport measures. We want to provide them with ex ante and ex post evaluation of these measures so as they know the impact. We want to match the specific city priorities in urban mobility with relevant measures. And we want to bring them good practices, which could be applicable in Czech terms. So we also promote, of course, some mobility management measures. And the tool has 5 steps. It starts with input data. When the city completes the information like size of the city or the goal of the transport policy. And then the second step is that the tool generates suitable measures for the city of different character, like strategic, infrastructural, mobility management. The next step is that the measures are linked to case studies. And the fourth step is quantification of potential impact. And the last step is issuing output protocol for the customer. The customer can be a city planner or a transport expert, or a person who works at the city development. So now it's a living tool. We work with the cities together upon their needs, and we believe that it will be of help to them. At the moment, we are programming the tool, so it should be definitely online and demonstrated in Cascais next year. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Radomira. Really interesting to hear. We will have the questions later on. So latest but not least, Rui Velasco from Portugal. Have your 10 minutes to talk.
Hello, Jesper. Thank you. And my name is Rui Velasco. I work at the Institute for Mobility and Transport here in Portugal. And for the past year, I've been working with the team that has been doing the monitoring of the PART. The PART is the support program for public transport fare reduction. And the main objective of the PART was to nudge people into public transport. So it's quite relevant if we talk a little bit about what was going on with this program. Following Jasper's introduction, which was like almost a trailer on how we reach the ground zero of mobility, if this was a movie, I'd have that screen now that would say, okay, 11 months before the ground zero. So we are now on the 1st April 2019, and this is where it started. This is where PART started, and PART is a financial program that was issued by the environmental fund, and that was directed to the transport authorities, and it was an investment of around 106 million euros. And when it was released, there was a call for the transport authorities to present plans to run for the program. And 23 out of the 23 regional transport authorities that we have in Portugal presented their proposals for the plan. And these 23 regional authorities include two metropolitan areas, the metropolitan area of Lisbon and the metropolitan area of Porto, and 21 intermunicipal communities. And even though on most cases the actions were carried out at a regional level by the regional transport authorities, on some cases the municipal level were already involved and were having their own program, so they could decide not to delegate their participation on the program and carry out directly that participation. And some municipalities, mostly the municipalities that have their own public transport services, follow that option and carry that option directly. So what we have is a program that it's financing fare reduction for public transport, and that has a coverage that completely covers the mainland Portugal. And that program resulted in two type of actions. We had 112 fare reduction measures and 45 increased offer measures. So there were two options that they could follow. And on the fare reduction measures, they could do integrated ticketing, they could do flat fares, they could reduce the fares for seniors and students. So it was kind of open to their own imagination on how they would reduce the fares for public transport. And on the increased offer measures, we had network extensions and some measures for on-demand transport. And our team in Institute for Mobility and Transport was in charge of doing the monitoring for that program. That monitoring is now being discussed with the intermunicipal communities and with the metropolitan areas. And we are not focusing on the monitoring itself, but as normally people tend to get curious about, okay, did it work? So I have here just two numbers for you to have some notion. The average monthly ticket price was around 98 euros on the 1st of April 2019, and when the program concluded the first year on the 31st of December 2020, that average monthly ticket price dropped to 46 euros. So from 98 euros to 46 euros, it's a great difference, and perhaps for the difference, but maybe not only for that difference, and we will talk a little bit about that. There was a general trend of increasing monthly ticket sales, and in some municipalities, that increase was over 30%. It was around 30% in the metropolitan area of Porto and around 25% increase in the metropolitan area of Lisbon. Of course, this is a simple number. You have to check out because some simple tickets sales have decreased, and that compensates a little bit. But generally, we are talking about a significant increase in public transport usage in 2019. So during those 9 months of the PART. Well, PART was not a program that was intended to be applied only in 2019. So we are now on 2020. PART is still running. It's running for 2020. And the intention is that it will be a program that it will continue to run. The financing, I forget to say, but this is important. Part of the financing comes directly from the central government. Parts of the funding comes from the municipalities. So there's a joint commitment to invest in public transport in order to nudge people to start using the public transport. And when we followed the part, what we saw was that the factors that were nudging people into the public transport were going a lot beyond the simple fare reduction and the increased offer. So what we started to see was that, for instance, the integrated ticketing in the metropolitan areas, but not only the integrated ticketing, but simplifying the tickets in the metropolitan areas. In the metropolitan area of Lisbon, the number of different tickets that were available were in the order of the thousands. And I know this sounds incredible, but it was in the order of the thousands. And with PART, there was an opportunity to simplify a lot the number of tickets available. And it was created, like my colleague Katarina talked in the morning session, a municipal pass and a metropolitan pass that allowed for transport on the whole metropolitan area. So mainly two types of tickets, and people were able to go wherever they want on the metropolitan area. So this was a first measure that was important. But what we saw was that the integrated ticketing that we saw in the metropolitan areas of Lisbon and Porto, when the intermunicipal communities started planning their investment in PART, they started replicating and doing a lot of integrated ticketing themselves. And this was something that was available on some cases on the metropolitan areas. You could have a ticket that was for subway and for road transport, but we started seeing that also outside the metropolitan areas. So there was a simplification and an integration of ticketing, not only on the metropolitan areas, but also on the intermunicipal communities. So using public transport becomes simpler. And this is also an important factor. There was a lot of people that when asked about why are you not using public transport, they used to say, oh, it's not so simple as that to understand what kind of ticket should I buy, how can I go from one place to another. And so this kind of measure will also addressing that concern. A different factor was that we were getting seamless public transport across regions, because when you get to the frontier of the metropolitan areas, there could not be a difference, a huge increase in the price. It would not be simply acceptable to have a difference from one municipality to the other if it was just because one belonged to the metropolitan area and the other one was outside the metropolitan area. So the metropolitan areas and the intermunicipal communities started dialoguing and working together, and they built a seamless public transport across regions that didn't have that sudden frontier rise cost. And people from outside the metropolitan areas were able to benefit from the reduction also, and be able to travel to Lisbon or to Porto with a reduced fare. Apart from that, we were only able to have that work from the transport authorities because they were all working together for PART. The metropolitan authorities and the authorities from the intermunicipal communities were created on 2015, and they have been working together on preparing their tenders for public transport. So we are talking about people that has been working together for the past 4 or 5 years, teams that were assembled and that are now getting used to work together. So the fact that they were all working together now at the same time doing the public transport reduction fare program also enabled for a lot of synergies. And it was the perfect space to share ideas, and in some cases even some healthy competition for finding the best mobility measures. So if one of the transport authorities were starting to do something, for instance, providing free transport for students or for some kind of people. The others would look it and see if that was successful and be able to follow that kind of measure. But not only were people working at the same time with rethinking public transport at the regional level, but also the municipalities, the major municipalities that had their own public transport systems were also doing this thing at the same time and working together with the regional level. And the national level was also present because the Environmental Fund was providing them the money. The Institute for Mobility and Transport was monitoring the process. The Authority for Mobility and Transport was also involved in providing some clarifications on the process. So we were able to get the national, the regional, and the local level working at the same time. And what we really got was a three-tier informal institutional architecture that really contributed to the internal dialogue of all involved institutions. Then there were some additional factors like...
Time to wrap up.
Okay, so wrapping up a little bit, and there another factor that was very important was not only the adaptation to demand, but also the timeliness of the measures. The program arrived at a moment where there's a lot of new legislation for on-demand transport, for car sharing, for ride-hailing. So we did provide a very complete legal framework to starting additional services, some of those public transport services and some of those complementing the public transport services. And so the timeliness of part was also very important. And now in 2020, we are getting to a new factor that is also very important, and we are getting to the ground zero that in 2020 part needs to face the safety factor. And that was a factor that we did not, it was not important on 2020, but even here on Ecom, we have seen that apps are now considering the safest routes as one of the options that they provide to the users. So they can go to the fastest routes, they can go to the cheapest route, or if they want, they could go to the safest route, which is the one that has less people on board. So we will now debate a little bit about how this a safety factor, what this brings as a new factor. How can this be a new factor to think public transport support and how to nudge people into public transport, especially because during 2020, of course, we have the same situation as in other countries and a lot of reduction on public transport usage. And as we are getting back and recovering, we need a lot of this nudging people back into public transport, and safety is a very important part of that.
Thank you. So, Radomir and Florence, if you, and Rui also, please stay in picture. And we want Radomir and Florence also coming back in picture. Great. We have you all here. So we got some questions from the audience. I think we have two questions, and I think they are to Florence. One from Kristen Leine. Do you have any findings about whether or not the messages actually changed behavior?
Okay, yeah. So that's so the messages that I presented to you was one study. So the study was about how messages are perceived, but we did an experiment before. We experimented the app with people in Bordeaux, and they used the app for several months. And we observed that people who declared that they saw the messages are more positive about sustainable transport. But our approach was not to observe people who use now after they read the message and they, oh yeah, I will use the bike or public transport. No, the goal was to change the mind about sustainable transport, and we observed that it worked. And I use a model that explained that behavior change is a 5-step process, and using the new transport mode is at the end of the process. And with the messages, we target the beginning of the process.
Okay, thanks. There was one more question from Ana Isabel Cosme Gomez. And it's also for you, Florence. Is there any evidence of the efficiency of the messages when considering the target group in terms of age?
In terms of?
Age.
Age. So to be honest, our sample was a small sample, and we couldn't separate ages and other parameters, socio-demographic parameters. But so the people we had in our sample were employees, about around between 30 and 50 years old. And but I cannot say if the age changed something, but they use even though they are 50 years, they use the app, and it wasn't that that parameter that changed the way they use the app and how they are sensible to the messages. It was more how strong they are a car driver and opposite to sustainable transport or not.
Okay, thanks. And this is a question, I think, for Rui. Give it to you. It's from same person, Ana Isabel Cosme Gomez. How to raise the offer in quantity and quality of public transport. Nowadays, in times of pandemic, the problem in the metropolitan area are the overloaded transports. How to overcome this?
Well,
Have any idea?
Yes, that is the question that's on the table of everyone who works with this issue. The question must have different points. You cannot act only on transport. You have to provide, of course, the right levels of transport, and you have to ensure that people trust that all the safety measures are being applied by the operators, and we have some very good examples, and UITP has been providing some of the best examples that are being done by the operators that are able to provide that trust to people. And of course, the big question is how can we avoid the overloading the transport? Well, that goes beyond transport, and we have to do a lot of measures. For instance, like having different schedules for people. Here in Portugal, for instance, one of the most disseminated practices that have been done is people now has the normal schedule is divided in 2 periods, the morning period and the afternoon period. So instead of having all the people arriving at work at the same time and leaving the work at the same time, have half the people arriving at one time, and then the other half will arrive only for the afternoon period. And also a thing that I believe it will be a part of the future is teleworking. So these Zoom conferences, these Zoom meetings. So some people will remain working at home, and that can provide a lot of that will be a part of our life in the future, I believe. But it's something that we need to measure and see how is it going. So it's a little bit of all this that I have talked, building trusts, ensuring that you don't have peak hours, or at least not so high peak hours. you need to proceed that pathway and keep monitoring the pandemic and see how you can adapt the transport to the evolution of the situation.
Because also we saw concerning this question, we have seen the same in Sweden and in public transport in Sweden that well, Sweden has been very open during this pandemic crisis in the society. Still, we have rules of social distancing and a certain level of people on every bus, on every train, and so on in public transport. So the direct effect was very much lower use of public transport because of that, because we had the same amount of the quantity of public transport, but we couldn't use the seats. And then after a while, they saw that they couldn't uphold this, so they decreased the quantity of public transport in order to lower the use. And I mean, there's still the biggest and the most important way of traveling to and from work that wasn't closed in Sweden. So I also think that a question is also a question for you. I think maybe I could ask it to Radomira about in Czech cities, because that should raise a question because public transport is publicly funded. Should it been the other way around? How was the discussion in the Czech Republic or somewhere else? Could it been more funding going in to raise the quantity of public transport, but still reserving the social distancing? So the same amount of people riding, but the quantity of buses and trains are the same. Has there been any discussions about that or measures in the Czech Republic?
Yeah, definitely. So the city authorities asked also for more funding in this difficult time as well, also for strengthening the connections and frequency of public transport, because we had the same restrictions like you said in Sweden, also distancings in the vehicles, at the bus stops, train stations, so everything was quite restricted. But what I can say that we had quite a good experience with the information system. So the nudging was kind of really good. People knew what to do, where to go, the arrows were everywhere, inscriptions. So they knew how to get oriented in the system. And the public transport use was decreased also due to restrictions, for example, to senior users. They should stay at home. So this kind of target group couldn't use public transport several weeks even. So this was also the drop in the model share in public transport. But usually Czech cities do very well in public transport share, because it's mostly half of all the journeys is done by public transport. If you look at the model splits, like in Brno, it's about 56% of public transport. So I know it dropped during this crisis time, but I believe that good campaigns and good steps will bring back people to the system. Also through campaigning and through good information, they will get in time. So there was no problem like with the information or the scheduling or public transport service, but it was really less used.
Okay. Thanks. We have a question that goes in line with this. I mean, car sharing could have been a solution here, not with many people in every car though, but using the cars without owning one, environmental cars in that way, of course. So Paulo Marquez Augusto is asking the question, should car sharing be financed by public funds? Kind of interesting in these times to anyone? Louis?
Yes. Kind of funny that you mentioned it, because we had a debate here in Portugal on how to manage the transport recovery following the pandemics, and car sharing and carpooling mainly was one of the solutions that was mentioned by several of the speakers. Carpooling might be more quick to adopt because people already have their cars. So it might be quick to nudge people into, if they are going to use the car, into make a better use of the car. For instance, providing some kind of free parking for people that are practicing the carpooling. And but besides carpooling and car sharing, that obviously can be a solution. Other complementary solutions besides public transport can be interesting. Walking and cycling are two very good examples. And if people want to go for a shorter, medium distance, they can go. They can use the soft boats. Lisbon is now giving some financial incentives to people who want to buy electric bikes to use. That's a very good measure, and people will be off the public transport, but still they will be using a sustainable mobility choice. So
good. Let's turn back to nudging. Well, there was nudging, really nudging you talked about now, but also we have a question from Manfred Neun. Is there anybody who would be able to give an example of nudging to avoid transport? This could be very important after liberalizing the lockdowns. So when we're opening up our societies now, how do we nudge people not to transport? Do we have any good explanation? Florence? No text message?
Yeah, yes, I am not sure that I think if we do something like this, we have to think very deeply how to do that, because we don't want this to stay. So we have to create something that people really understand that it's temporary, and then they don't avoid public transport for years after this nudging. So I have no example, but I just would say to be careful about the kind of nudge we would use.
Good. And I also want to point out that I think this will be done pretty much by a lot of employers, companies, or public authorities also, that now have seen that it works pretty good with people working from home. Not all the time, every day, as it has been, but pretty much more than it was before. So I have talked to several big companies in Sweden, and they are implementing really interesting policies with the aim to have, well, at least 40% of the working staff working from home every day. Well, not during this time, but also after this time, because they see that this works really good and we don't really need people to travel every day. So hopefully that will help. Rory, do you have any good nudge that will keep people from avoiding transport now? Yes, for the next months.
You've touched the right keys, that people working from home will be a greater reality in the future that has been in the past. We really are not able to tell the real dimension of that phenomena, but the number of people that started, and you showed a very good graphic of that. The number of people that started using online solutions for meetings, and most of that people, it would be interesting to see how much of that people, what percentage didn't use online meetings before the pandemics, and I believe it would be a very large percentage. So I believe we will do a more rational use of transport. It doesn't mean we don't use transport, but maybe we can do a better decision of when we really need to use transport. For instance, if I'm going to do a 5-hour trip to have a 15-minute meeting, maybe I can do it online. So it's probably not worth going a 5-hour trip to do a 15-minute meeting. So that kind of decision, and 2 years ago, I would have done that trip even if it didn't make any rational sense, because probably the people that I would be meeting didn't have any experience on online meetings. That changed. So I believe we will be able to do a more rational decisions of when we want to use transport, when is it rational to use transport.
Radomira, I have a question for you. Well, it's a kind of a statement from Carlos Orti with a question inside it. Yesterday, Spanish government announced 3,750 millions of euro for the car industry to help them survive this. And the similar actions have been seen from the French and German governments. Anything to say was his question, but I know what we all would like to say, but I'm thinking, Radomir, have you seen any kind of helping money for public transport in the Czech Republic?
You mean in this period? Now?
Yeah, in this period, to help them.
There are specific funds coming through the regional governments to the local level, so it should be strengthened. And at the same time, when we spoke about avoiding the trips, so we have the same experience with home working and distant learning. So universities got pretty much into the situation and instructed the students. So the kind of teaching was continuing in online form. So reduction of trips in the sense, in the absolute sense, is not bad if the people can cope without. So it's a solution too. But the public transport, at least the level of service we had, should be really maintained and financed. So it's going on, and the authorities ask for more funding, and it's coming slowly, but it is.
Okay, let's have a question for all of you. It's about nudging. I wonder if, what do you think? Is it harder to nudge people into new mobility behaviors than into new consuming behaviors? Because we know nudging is from the consuming side of everything. So yeah, is it harder? Should we start with Florence?
I think yes, because consuming is only one action, and when you consume something, when you buy something, or even for something else, something like what's it? When you sorry, the vocabulary for the trash, when we put this not in the trash where you put the other things. Even that is easier to change, that travel behavior, because it's not connected with the other in your family, and it's not connected to the other thing you have to do in your day. So if I want to change the way I go to work, it's not only the way I go to work, it's only the way I go to the thing I go after my work. So that's why I think it's more difficult. And also you need to learn how to use a bike, how to use public transport. So it's different skills you need to learn to be able to use them.
It's bigger, actually, yeah. Rui?
It's changing a behavior. It's never easy. Either it's buying something or changing the way you go to your workplace. But maybe it's easier. I was thinking about online shopping that a lot of people started doing during the past months. Also, a lot of them for the first time. And yes, maybe it was easier to get people to start using online shopping, and it might be more difficult to get people to change their transport behaviors. But Florence was telling it's a decision, it's a family decision. Most of the times, it's not an individual decision. And when a family is considering that decision, it has to weigh a lot of the benefits. It's completely different if you go with your school, with your kid to the school by walking or by taking him by car. And you should not consider only if it's faster, because maybe it's a good opportunity to spend some time and to talk a little bit about with him about how school is going. So you should take into consideration a lot of the benefits of changing that behavior, even though it might be difficult. If you start walking to school, and if you're lazy like me, maybe you don't need to go to the gym so many times. So you have to weigh the benefits when you take that decision. So even though it's a more complex decision, it's a decision that might bring some additional benefits, and that is worth the effort.
Radomira?
I think there might be some solutions, especially for young people, because during the coronavirus time, we had, for example, broadcasting with celebrities, which showed challenges for people, how they could, for example, exercise every day, etc. So the same tool indeed could be used also for nudging to sustainable mobility. Like if we create kind of opinion leaders through social media. So the people who are a kind of favorite by young people who show that they cycle or they like sustainable mode of transport. So this could be the way, kind of marketing through social media. So this could be one way. Also the other options, like for people carpooling or ways to schools for children. So all this can be done through schools or other stakeholders, the companies. So in Czech Republic, we have quite good examples also of company travel plans, which are well marketed. So this could be one of the ways, communication to employers, showing this as products.
Yeah, I think it's also an overall possibility to become better for public authorities to market.
Yeah.
To market anything. There's not the priority or the best thing they can actually. So one question on your presentation, Radomira, or your talk before, if there are any significant results that verify the success of the implementation of your plan or from your program.
You mean our planner, the urban?
Yeah, the plum.
Yeah, the plum.
Yeah.
So we discuss it with the cities. So we have once upon a time, we have a workshop with them and we show the interim results. So we have the results that the cities really need to have good strategies. The most interest is in parking policies. And of course, some measures in public transport, the cycling networks, and also the public transport integration and stuff like that. So we discussed with them their needs in transport solutions and what transport problems can be matched through these solutions.
Great. So this leads us into your final comments as speakers. I just wanted to point out before you have your last comments as a small question, if it isn't the biggest nudge that we have seen now for all time for travel-free meetings, for example, that we're experiencing right now. Something to bear in mind, the largest nudge of all. But some final comments from you on 3 minutes each on how to nudge people into new mobility thinking and behavior, and the discussions that have been now, and how overall overactions that can influence and shape people's daily choices in terms of mobility and so on. So we'll start with Florence.
Yes. Just to come back to the precedent questions, to the previous question was about the nudging and how difficult it is for transport behavior. And because it's difficult, I think it's so for me the model shift is not just something we do like this. It's not something that you just wake up this morning and think, oh, today I'm gonna change and I will use my bicycle. No, it's a process, and it's a long process. And for example, I used the 5-step process that was invented by other researcher. And in this process, they explained that in each step, you need a special intervention. So when you're at the beginning of the process, you don't use the same intervention that when you are in the end, where you just need to push the people to go to the action and use actually the bicycle, for example. So because travel behavior change is difficult to impulse, I think it's very important to use the different tools we have in our possession to help people to go through the process.
True, and that's something that I always point out also, and we should everybody think what you said there. It's a long process, and we need to work with every step. It's very hard to skip 1 or 2 or 3 steps and think that we will have the same effects. Great points. Radomira.
Yeah, so as I said already in my input, I think the most important is to have a good offer, like a good multimodal network, and it should be communicated in a clear way. So as it's not really necessary to learn a lot to get insight into public transport system. So as it's easy to use. So the offer is the basis, I think, the good planning of city authorities, also the communication from city authorities and mobility providers to the users, and also some examples like city politicians maybe showing the good example, making nice cycling tours, discovering the region by bicycle, and stuff like this. That maybe kind of marketing of public transport companies. They have specific also plans for marketing. So public transport as a product, like anything else. And I think in Czech Republic we do quite well. So we really need to keep the levels of public transport. What is our challenge is to decrease the car use, at least maybe to change the thinking about the car itself as a status. So it's not a solution for everything, the car. So we should have to communicate it that it's not that fast in the city center, for example. So we should bring the results from our research, how other modes compete to the car. So this would be my message, how to nudge people, as I said, to bring the information to the people so as they can see what is the right benefit for them and what is the real cost of using car and where are used it.
Great.
And, the good services like Florence, when she spoke about trip planner and applications which are really user-friendly and which bring solutions like sustainable solutions first as the option for the user.
Good. Bring clear information to the user and build it on a multimodal network. But also very important. I mean, we can clearly see that we don't have multimodal networks in almost any cities. We talk about where we have them, but they are modal and they are multi, but it's not a multimodal network. I have to get them together for the user to work, and especially when we could move big chunks of users into the other modes when it's important, when we have to keep social distancing, put the public transport users on e-scooters, for example, or on bikes, but in the same network and in the same ticketing system, for example. Then we have the social. Great. Rui.
Yes.
Yes.
Taking on what you were saying, Jasper, it really is to think in an integrated way. That multimodal is a key word, and it was a fundamental aspect of PART of the success that PART achieved in 2019, and it will be very important for people to start using public transport and other sustainable modes again, because people don't want to know if they have to buy different tickets or the schedules of different mode of transport. They want to go from A to B in a simple way, if possible in a direct way, but they want to go in a easy way, and so you have to provide them the means to make that choice easy, and that is a very important aspect of the question. Another one, and we haven't yet mentioned it, and I wouldn't like to have it forgotten, is it's important, and 2020 is a stress test not only for public transport but also for public transport operators. PART had a very important role on providing financial support to the operators during the crisis and on the recovering period by using historical data of transport to provide a support to the operators rather than the real usage of transport, which in 2020, of course, we know it's a lot lower and it's not significant. So also the public transport operators need that confidence and need that investment to be able to keep the levels and the quality that they have been providing to the people, and support them on the additional expenses that they have to ensure the safety quality that the passenger require. So that's also an important aspect that I wanted to mention. And taking on what I have said before, timeliness is very important. You talked about a momentum. We have a momentum. Again, we are thinking at the same time at the national level, at the regional level, at the local level. We are all thinking on the same question: is how are we going to get back to transport? How are we going to the normal levels of transport? And the fact that we are all thinking about it and are able to talk and deal with common issues can provide some very interesting solutions. Some changing schedules, for instance, is something that it might be easier now. We can talk with education and with schools and be able to change the school schedules, for instance, much easier than we could have done it in the past. So the momentum that we are now living is very important, and it can provide us some opportunities that we didn't have in the past to think mobility as a whole. So it can be an opportunity to retake public transport and to retake transport in general in a better way. And in a better way includes a lot of what we have discussed. Maybe only using transport when needed, when using transport, having rational decisions, using public transport but avoiding peak hours, and using other complementary soft modes, bikes, walking, car sharing, carpooling, and it's the mix of all these components that can provide us maybe can provide us a good future for mobility and transport. And I believe we have the opportunity to follow that path and to go in that direction, and we should proceed in that way.
Yes, I agree fully. So easy usage, but also this, maybe we have now learned how to work and become to have a faster flexibility. I understood you. When we need to change times and everything in public transport, and we can do that because now we need to do that. We know that we might need to do that very fast. We didn't know that before. Not in this way. And the mix of modes that also comes back, and it's, yeah, that's also something that hopefully will go faster now. Okay, thank you, everybody. Really good discussion. A lot of things came up. There was a lot of questions that we didn't have time for, sadly, but hopefully you can go in and read them in the recording. So maybe it's possible for you to answer them later on through emails or something. We'll see. Okay, so just to wrap up this session now, the last minutes, I wanted to just point out again that this webcast will be available on the webpage, and I guess it's the Ecom 2021 webpage and also EPOM's webpage. In any way, some of them, any of them. And then also do an announcement. I mean, this was the session number 4. So of course there is a session number 5, and the session number 5 is about new mobility, which could be an opportunity for urban and rural regeneration. And there were some questions about rural areas and how to work with nudging in rural areas, how it works. So I think you should definitely go to the next session, number 5. And it will be in the 23rd of June between 10 and 11:30 Central European time. So thank you all for attending this session. And I hope it gave you some new information and some questions to take back to your colleagues and friends to keep on discussing. So once again, thank you for joining. Goodbye.